All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for logging on this early morning in August for Good Morning Healdsburg. I'm really excited to have everyone back, and we have a good lineup coming up for the next few speakers as well. But this morning we have Leslie, the Executive Director from Zero Waste Sonoma. She has worked over 20 years in the solid waste and resource management industry. She, as well as being the ED of Zero Waste Sonoma, she oversees the household hazardous waste, recycling, organics, and zero waste programs for 10-member jurisdictions in Sonoma County. Prior to this appointment, she was the director of zero waste at SCS Engineers, a solid waste, recycling, and organics management consulting firm for 13 years. So Leslie has also had her own zero waste consulting company for 7 years. So it's easy to say, I think she is an expert in the topic. So I will let Leslie take it away. She has a PowerPoint for us, and then we will take questions at the end. So feel free to raise your hand or put your question in the chat box.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. If I can. Let's see here. I just had it up. Hold on 1 second.
No problem. We still have people who are coming into the Zoom. So
Okay, and then Jessica, I may need to email it to you because I'm not quite sure why it's not showing up anymore. Let's see if I do it this way. There we go. Alrighty, so everyone can see my screen?
yes, we can. It's your files.
You just see files?
Yes.
You don't see a PowerPoint?
No, we have the other screen where I can see your list of the different PowerPoints, and Healdsburg Breakfast is at the top.
Okay, interesting. And is it open now?
It looks like it's trying to open and has the circle, spinning circle near your mouse.
Okay, let's see here.
If you're in slideshow mode, sometimes it opens it in a different window, so you may have to exit out of slideshow mode.
Okay, do you see it now or no?
No, we do not.
Okay, interesting. Do you mind if I email it to you real fast?
Sure.
Are you probably seeing my emails?
And no, it's still just the screen with your files.
Okay. It is on its way to let's see, it's on its way to you right now.
Perfect.
But it is I apologize for this.
That's
We
okay.
actually tested it before, and
we'll open it up once it comes through.
okay, perfect. It is downloading. Okay, so I will go ahead and get started, and if it comes up, great. If not, I'm just gonna do the presentation as is. So Zero Waste Sonoma, we are a joint powers authority, and we represent the 10 member jurisdictions. So our member jurisdictions are the 10 cities and the county as well. And the reason why the joint powers authority was formed was because in the late 80s, there was a law that required all the cities in California to recycle 50% of their material stream, as there was concern that California would run out of landfill space. So with that, the 10 jurisdictions decided to form the JPA so that we could do all the legislative work on behalf of the 10 jurisdictions. And also it required government to oversee some of the programs like household hazardous waste, recycling, organics management. So with that, I want to just talk a little bit about the history of material management. Waste is actually a little bit of a complex thing. It is something that is international in that waste doesn't just have come, generate here in California. It's really a globalization of a complex system with a supply chain demands of resources all around the world. So we might buy a product here in California, but it could be produced somewhere else in the world. And that's the same with the management of that material. We may use it here, but recycle it in another country. So there's a lot of moving pieces happening. But the concept of zero waste is really to design wasting out of the system. We really want to try and figure out how to reuse and recycle and reduce the materials that we're using so the final destination is that it's either recyclable, compostable, or can be reused. So we're really working with this circular economy or circular system. Maybe that's some terms that you've heard before. But how did government really get in the position of managing waste and recycling and composting? Really at the turn of the century, waste was a much simpler thing. Materials were more organic and they were typically burned, but it was really government managing waste and materials really came out of health and safety of the population. So that's a time where government really stepped in and had an organized way of collecting what we dispose and managing it properly. But really what we saw during World War II is a time when managing your materials was a part of the movement of being patriotic. So I have a series of actually propaganda posters that we used at the time, posters saying waste not, want not. It's patriotic if you can your materials, victory gardens in your backyard, prepare for winter, save your perishable food. Food is a weapon, don't waste it. We saw a lot of these things that we're trying to bring back today to talk about managing our resources. And we even had signs that said, fight food waste in the home, buy to save to serve, store to save. So it was really an interesting time where we had this connection about conserving resources. But after, I'd say, World War II, there was a big shift in managing resources. And that's where we saw the invention of single-use disposables. There was a Life magazine article and actually marketing material of a family, and they're all jumping up in the air, a mother and a husband and 2 kids, and it's all their single-use disposables. And what this messaging was saying was, we can liberate the American family and actually the woman by allowing her to have more time in home if we all use single-use disposable products. So that's really where we saw this shift in a lot of single-use plastics and innovation of the to-go, but this was a very wasteful system. And it was designed this way, it was planned. It's called planned obsolescence, where it's a way to stimulate the economy, because if we can get people to continue to buy things to dispose, then there's a reduced longevity of that product, and it has low durability, but it guarantees profits and revenues for the future. So it catches the highest price for that product. So instead of just using a reusable plate or a reusable cup over and over, or your clean canteen over and over, if we just get people to keep buying that single-use water bottle or disposable plates, we guarantee that there is revenue for that product in the future. So it's really a way that creates the highest price in the market for each item that is planned to be obsolescent. But we also see that in other products like your cell phone. it's planned that the battery will only last so long, even though the device is still good. So there's a lot of pushback right now against planned obsolescence and actually things like the right to repair. That's one frustrating thing, like with your cell phone or iPad. If you go to repair it and you just use one of those shops in the mall, you actually lose the warranty of that product. And that's all planned because, Apple, or I won't pick on Apple, it's other companies as well. They design it that way so that you just have to continue to upgrade and buy more so that they can plan for those revenues in the future. And we see, very complicated packaging out there. For example, I have some pictures of if you receive an Amazon box, the product might be small, but your box is really big. I've even seen things where avocados are cut in half and they're in cellophane because it's so hard to just, cut the avocado at home. I've even seen packaging for peeled bananas, which now, a banana is perfectly in the perfect packaging that exists, but now it's in a styrofoam plate with some cellophane on top. So we have to fight against these things because they just don't make sense. Another one that we've worked on here in Sonoma County is single-use styrofoam packaging for foodware. We really don't have an outlet for it, so we took some policy so that we could do that, manage it properly. But when we look at waste and we look at zero waste, what we do know about materials is when we receive a product, the wasting of that product actually happens, 71% of it happens before we even receive it in the first place. And I'm going to share a life cycle analysis of a Coca-Cola can. And this is a Coca-Cola can that's purchased in England. And a company went out and wanted to understand the footprint of what it took to create that Coca-Cola can that we may only use for 3 minutes. So the story starts in Australia, and Australia has bauxite where it is mined so that they can get the aluminum ore from the bauxite. The aluminum ore is now sent to a factory where it is made into a powder form so that it could be prepared to be made into aluminum. So the aluminum ore is a powder form at this point after it's been extracted from the earth, and it's put into bags so that it can be put into a barge, and the barge is actually sent from Australia all the way to Sweden and Norway, where they use hydroelectric energy, hydropower. It's a cheaper form of power to then smelt or make that powder into an aluminum. So the aluminum is dropped off into the factory where it is melted, made into sheets. These sheets are coiled up. They are transferred into a truck, sent to a factory where now they can make the cans. The cans are then unloaded and they are washed, and they sit with the lid on top. And now they're boxed again, put onto another barge, where those cans are now shipped to England, where they're going to be filled eventually with the Coca-Cola product. But once they're unloaded, they get to the can factory where they need to be washed, lacquered, and painted 3 different times before they're washed again. And now they have the Coca-Cola messaging on the outside, and the lid is still just sits on top. Those cans are boxed again, transferred to the next factory where they have to be unloaded, washed one more time before they're finally filled with ingredients from all over the world, where phosphorus comes from France, beets comes, the beet sugar from the beets come from one area, caffeine comes from another part of the world, where finally all those ingredients are sent to England so that can finally be filled with the sugary Coca-Cola drink. And now the lid is finally sealed onto the top of the Coca-Cola can. From that point, the Coca-Cola cans are put into their own boxes with the Coca-Cola packaging or marketing on the outside, so that now it can go to the distribution center, and finally from the distribution center to the grocery store, where we may only have that Coca-Cola can for, like I said, 3 minutes before we have a choice of what are we going to do with that can. Are we going to recycle it? So all those resources and all that embedded energy that went to make that can be reused, or do we, or is it just thrown away? And so if it's thrown away, obviously you just lost all that embedded energy that went in to make that product. And if you recycle it, then of course we can reuse that aluminum over, so we can cut off a bunch of those steps within versus using virgin material. And the EPA did an interesting study where the EPA, they used to look at industries and how much greenhouse gases a particular industry, like let's say the transportation industry. And they looked at the greenhouse gases that were generated from a particular industry. And instead of looking at it that way, they did another study where they looked at greenhouse gases from a system-based approach. And what they found is that 44% of all the products and packaging, so the provision of goods and the goods that we use, 44% of greenhouse gases comes from that whole system of transporting products, using products, disposing products. So our industry has a huge impact on climate and climate initiatives when we understand how systems are all connected. California is really a leader in addressing greenhouse gases. One of the first legislation of its kind was called AB 32. It was California's Global Warming Solutions Act, and that was passed in 2016. And from that law, it had the goal of reducing our greenhouse gases by 40% by the year 2030. And that really became California's climate action plan. From there, there has been a series of legislation that has required a reduction of different, for us, the laws that affect our industry is that it required a mandatory organics recycling, as well as another law called SB 1383, which is a short-lived Climate Pollutants Act, which really focuses on organic material getting out of the landfill. Because in a landfill, there is no air, it's aerobic. So when you put organics into a landfill, the way it decomposes is it produces methane. Methane is a 26 times more potent greenhouse gas than even carbon is. And when we talk about climate action plans, they tend to address carbon, but methane is a way larger emitter of a greenhouse gas than even carbon is, or its impact. And landfills tend to be the biggest emitters of methane, even though a lot of modern landfills have methane collection systems, methane still emits from landfills. So in order to address that, we need to take the organics out and manage the organics properly. So SB 1383 does just that. It focuses on getting organics out, and it's a very prescriptive law. It tells us exactly how we need to do this, and we have to enact this law on behalf of our 10-member jurisdictions. Not only that, the law also addresses food insecurity. 1 in 8 Californians are food insecure every night, every day, and actually it's 1 out of 5 of children. And when you look at all the food that's being wasted, I should say edible food that's being wasted, that's food from the grocery stores, from maybe even schools. We have these high generator of edible food that's actually being disposed. So the law requires us as an agency in all jurisdictions to have these ways to intersect and collect edible food and make sure it gets to distribution centers and back out to feed food insecure people. So what this law requires is that by 2025 that we reduce organic waste going to a landfill by 75%, and it requires that we increase the recovery of edible food by 20%. So we are working very hard to meet these deadlines. 2025 is right around the corner. The law was just passed really in 2022, or it took effect in 2022. So we do know that as long as you're moving in the right direction of the law, the state's gonna work with you, because it's a pretty quick turnaround time. At the same time, we also have a lot more understanding about the benefits of putting compost on rangeland. There is a group out of Marin called the Marin Carbon Project, where they studied the impacts of putting compost on your soil in your rangeland versus fertilizer, which was typically used, or chemical fertilizers, or just leaving the land itself. So what they did at a marine carbon project is they studied various test plots where they used those three combinations, just leaving the land as is, putting a fertilizer to manage weeds, and then putting compost. And then they let the cows come in and range on that land. And what they discovered is the land that had the compost on it, actually the native grasses were able to come back at a much faster rate than some of the weeds and the thistles that were coming through. And so they studied why were the grasses coming back faster, native grasses coming back faster with the use of compost. And what they found is that the root structures of the native grasses could actually grow deeper and stronger, which meant that they were sequestering more carbon from the atmosphere when you have a bigger root system. Weeds tend to have a shallow system, where our native grasses have a deeper system. So then they went ahead and studied, okay, if we know that the roots are growing deeper, what is that carbon sequestration that's happening? And they got some of the best scientists out of Berkeley to study this sequestration process. And what they discovered, that if you put just a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch layer of your agricultural land, you can sequester about 28 million tons of carbon from the atmosphere. And that's when it's applied to 5% of California's rangeland. And sequestering that much carbon equates to about 6 million cars emitting greenhouse gases. So that was a huge impact and a huge study. That was only if we put compost on 5% of rangeland, but 67% of California is actually rangeland. So its impact, compost impact, is huge in California. So all of that is background to Zero Waste Sonoma and some of the work that we do. So as mentioned, we are the responsible for overseeing all of the organics management programs for residential homes. We do outreach and education of zero waste and recycling and composting. We manage the household hazardous waste program, and we do all the compliance and reporting on behalf of our 10 member jurisdictions. So with our household hazardous waste, we actually operate a facility down at Central Landfill, which is southern Santa Rosa, northern Petaluma. We also do e-waste, electronics collection events, and household hazardous waste collection events every Tuesday throughout Sonoma County. And we have a reuse program from chemicals that are left over that we save. And if you come to Central Landfill, to our facility, there's actually free products that we give right back out to the public that are still usable. We also manage our organics, where we organics material, the green bin, is taken to our transfer stations. And then from there, organics material goes to 3 different facilities located outside of Sonoma County. We are in the process of trying to bring back an organics facility or a compost facility within Sonoma County, because unfortunately, it doesn't make sense for us to export or transport all of our organic material to these compost facilities out of county, when we know the agricultural community needs to buy that compost out of county just to bring it right back in. So we are working on a project, and hopefully that can come to fruition in the next few years. That would be great to reduce that greenhouse, that transportation footprint of material going out of county. So with that, we do also work with the county on climate mobilization plan, Zero Waste Sonoma, and the programs that we offer are part of that plan, and we have a big impact. We did pass zero waste resolution with all of our 10 member jurisdictions, and but we do know we have a heavy lift, and it's going to take a lot to get our to minimize the amount of materials going to our landfill. The goal is 90% diversion of materials from our landfill. Right now, we're throwing away about 400,000 tons of waste in the landfill. To bring that down to 75%, it'd be around 300,000 tons. But to achieve a 90% diversion, it'd be about 125,000 tons. So that is some work that we are working on. Right now in Sonoma County, we recycle and divert about 67% of our materials going to the landfill, and we want to get that number up to 90. So some of the things that we have done is the model ordinance to ban disposable foodware and polystyrene foam. So our messaging is reusables is best. And when you're using single-use foodware, recyclables is great. Fiber, we're really trying to teach the restaurants and the to-go companies what is recyclable and compostable, and we're doing away with all polystyrene foam, or otherwise known as styrofoam. So we have banned the sale of styrofoam coolers. We've banned the sale of styrofoam to go ware at like a food at your grocery stores. Also the peanuts, like if you were to mail something and we had the styrofoam peanuts, and those should no longer be used. If you see any of those products being used, you just simply inform Zero Waste Sonoma. You go to our website, and then we do the outreach to make sure that people are using the right products in Sonoma County. So one of the most recent ordinances we're working on is a construction, demolition, and deconstruction ordinance. Deconstruction material, or I should say construction and demolition material, is very heavy and it's very recyclable. So we are working with our 10-member jurisdictions to actually pass a model ordinance so that we can address these products and manage them properly, and that we have some type of mechanism to make sure that these products are being recycled to the best of its ability. We're doing some innovative things. We are just launching a pilot with a company called Sparkle, and Sparkle is a reusable to-go-ware product. And so instead of just using the single-use foodware, we are doing some pilots around Sonoma County where we're using reusable clamshells, so that if you go, let's say, to Oliver's and you go to the hot bar, instead of just using the single-use disposable products there, we're talking to them about using these reusables where the consumer would take the product home, and then the next time that they go back to Oliver's, they would bring back their reusable, and then we could continue to use reusables. And then with that pilot, we hope to learn more information and then expand it to other areas of our county. I'm going to just talk about a series of some investments in Sonoma County, and then I'll be done for take Q&A. But we are working with a group called Closed Loop Partners, and they are investing $2 million into a pilot program of reusable cups. And these would be reusable cups used at places like Starbucks, fast food, 7-Eleven. And so the reusable cups is you go to the point of sale, instead of just getting your cup with a lid with a straw that you can just dispose, you're actually going to get a cup with a lid, and you can drink it. And then there's going to be all these return centers all throughout the system, and as well as wherever you got that cup from in the first place, they will take it back. A third party is going to wash them and then resell these cups. And this Closed Loop Partners only chose one location in the nation to invest their $2 million into the system. And we were selected, Sonoma County, just because of some of the innovations that were already happening, that they thought that a program like this would work here. But the intent is that we're working with the big brands like Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Pepsi, PepsiCo to do this, launch this reusable program. And it's really intended to gain information so it could be launched across the United States. Another innovation that we did was a solar panel recycling program. We received a $100,000 grant to do solar collection events from residential. We are seeing that residential solar panels, some of them that were put on maybe 30 years ago, they're now being replaced. So we held our first event just last month, actually in June, and we collected almost 200 solar panels from residents. And we tested those panels. Only 6 of those were reusable. So we partnered with a Habitat Restore, and those 6 panels are going to the Habitat Restore for reuse. And all the rest of them are going to be recycled, and we're covering the cost through that grant. And we are going to be adding, I'd say, up to 10 events to collect solar panels throughout Sonoma County. We received a $2.5 million grant through a program at the state called Cal Volunteers, where we're providing jobs for 84 young adults through the in partnership with the California Conservation North Bay. They are doing a food recovery programs, and that helps us to be in compliance of that law I mentioned, 1383. And they're actually also doing collection of hazardous and illegally dumped materials all throughout Sonoma County. We received a $300,000 grant from the USDA, and this is also to strengthen or to increase our collection of organic material to focus on creating compost for soil carbon sequestration projects. And this is not only just rangeland, but we're actually doing soil sequestration projects on agricultural land. Also the wine industry, we do have some partner wineries that are looking at carbon sequestration on their operations. We received a $100,000 grant from Sonoma County's Climate Resiliency Fund. This is funding from PG&E settlement, where we are doing carbon sequestration projects through the utilization of compost right now on over 4,000 acres of farmland. And we're adding another 2,500 acres right now in this project. We received a $1.5 million grant to bring back beverage container recycling depots. Actually, one is in Healdsburg, right behind the parking lot in City Hall. And we have 4 of those going, or we have 4 that are in operation now. Right now, they're only open 2 days a week, but we are transitioning that they're all going to be automated, and they'll be open 24/7 in the next 6 months. So we're just trying to make that easier for the consumer to recycle their beverage containers and get that 5-cent deposit back. We also host a number of compost giveaways. So this is to inspire or have people use compost in their own gardens. We are focusing on creating zero waste events because we know events can be pretty wasteful with single-use products. So we recently launched a zero waste events guide, and we're working with various events communities to have their events go zero waste. We put on the Zero Waste Symposium annually. That just happened in May of this year, where we have some content, local content, as well as some of the best content in the nation, trying to foster zero waste programs in our own community. Just last week, we had our Zero Waste Week, where we had over 30 events happening throughout the community, not just events that we put on, but events through the libraries. And we had over 30 community partners launching this event. And this event actually created a lot of radio interviews, as well as print. We have some of the best information that happened getting zero waste content out there to the community just this last week for Zero Waste Week. We always have to deal with problematic products and trying to figure out what to do with them. One of the big ones right now is vape pens. Vape pens are potentially hazardous. They have a battery, but they're also made out of metal and plastic. So there's a lot of pushback right now happening to get the vape industry to be responsible for their management of their own products versus us as a government entity. But right now we have to deal with them. So with that, I'm probably out of time. I apologize that the PowerPoint didn't work, but I do want to take your questions that you may have on some of the programs that we're doing here in Sonoma County on behalf of the 10 jurisdictions.
Thank you so much, Leslie, for that. And sorry about the technical difficulties over here, but you did a wonderful job at still explaining it all to us. I really appreciate it. If anybody has any questions, please go for it. Raise your hand, put it in the chat box. And we can send out the slides as well to everybody here afterwards, just to have that visual. All right. Well, if there's no questions, I want to thank you very much, Leslie, for taking your time out of your vacation to come and sit with us this morning and speak with us. And it was wonderful. Oh, I believe Evelyn, Councilmember Evelyn Mitchell actually has a question.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you, Leslie, for doing this. And whenever I go to the meetings, I'm always impressed with everybody, the staff. And you might mention, you've got a very small staff that does all of these things, right? How many people work for Zero Waste?
Right now we have an intern helping us over the summer, so there's 9 of us total. And yes, when I started, the agency had 5 people, so we've almost doubled, and a lot of that has to do with the grants that we're receiving that we need to implement. But yes, it's a lot of work, but a lot of passion involved as well.
Yeah. And I'm always inspired when as I said, when I hear you, when I see what we're doing, and so and the collaboration between all the communities as well as the county, I think is really critical to success. So thank you, and thank you for talking to us this morning.
My pleasure.
Great. Thank you very much, Leslie. You're welcome to stay on. Oh, sorry. It looks like we have a question in the chat from Teresa asking, when is your next event?
Oh, which events? We have events all the time. So
I think just whatever your next one is, unless Teresa have a specific one in mind.
I mean, we have weekly household houses collection events, and I can just say those are on our website. We do also post our board packets, and we list all the events happening in our board packet on a monthly basis, but we're doing events weekly. We have outreach events in the community. We do radio spots, both in English and Spanish, regularly on, and, you know, we do partner events. We just did just last week, we did a fix-it clinic where we had fixers coming out. So fixers could be anyone who could fix small appliances, lamps, knife sharpening. We did a clothing swap, really just people brought clothes and you could just have them for free. So we do those types of events so that we try and promote fixing broken appliances versus just throwing away and buying new. And we try to put about 4 of those events on per year.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, if that's all the questions we have this morning, thank you, Leslie. You're welcome to stay on and hear some updates from our city council members and our city manager, but I can pass it over to our mayor, Ariel Kelley.
Thanks, Jessica. And thank you so much, Leslie, for this presentation this morning. That was very informative and a lot of incredible work you guys are doing. So thank you. So we have a lot happening at City Hall, and happy to share this update for August. So as many folks know, we had the cannabis application program application window open. It closed at the end of July. So staff is now reviewing the applications to determine if they're complete. And once that step is done, we're going to be posting those applications on the city's website. And the applications all include the proposed locations for where those businesses would like to operate. Then they'll be scored, and we anticipate sometime around October or mid-fall when the scores will be complete and the applications will be brought to the city council for our public interview process and deliberation on which operators will be selected. We are going to be having a conversation later this month at the City Council about where to locate the SMART station in Healdsburg. So since our last presentation here at Good Morning Healdsburg from Eddie Cummins, the general manager of SMART, SMART received another $30 million grant for the Healdsburg and Windsor extensions. This was through the statewide competitive grant program called the Solutions for Congested Corridors program. And this was something that Caltrans had prioritized to help us get the funding for this segment. So that will be before the City Council in a discussion, I think, at the second meeting in August. And also coming up next month under the housing umbrella, we are going to be updating the housing needs assessment and talking about the housing element work group of residents who are working on housing policy issues. So we will be having a discussion around retaining a consultant to do that assessment and do next steps for advancing housing priorities in the community around the policy work. The fire substation on the north end of town, we're going to be awarding that contract, the construction contract, later this month and breaking ground on that project later this fall. The Foley Family Pavilion is going to bid, and we expect the construction contract for that likely to be awarded in September with a groundbreaking this fall as well. And then the Randall Affordable Apartment Building, also known as the Mill District Affordable Apartments by McDonald's, those 41 units are complete and now have had tenants move in, and we're going to be doing a ribbon cutting ceremony in September. Also happening at the North Healdsburg Avenue Complete Streets Project, the re-envisioning of Healdsburg Avenue from Powell all the way to the northern city limit. That design contract is being awarded this month, and then the design work will be underway. So as many folks know, we take July off from council meetings, although staff is still busy working. But on Monday, we are back with our first council meeting in August. And on the agenda includes a presentation of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Plan and recommended actions for implementation. We're also going to be discussing the creation of a potential arts commission, as well as the new park project at Saggio Hills, with the discussion around cost estimates of the individual elements of the park and opportunities for private donations, sponsorships, and naming rights of elements within the park. And finally, as many folks know, we have finally completed the business license automation project. So we've expanded online services and accepting business licenses and renewals online through a new virtual system. So business owners don't need to come into City Hall to file for a new application or renew their license on paper. It can all be done online from an internet-enabled device from home or from work. And this was a long awaited and overdue process where we're kind of overhauling an old paper system and bringing it into the new millennium. So that's it on updates, and happy to answer any questions or turn it over to Jeff for anything I missed.
All right. Well, we will pass it over to our city manager, Jeff Kay. Thank you so much, Mayor Kelley, for that update. And if any questions come up, please feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and we can give questions to both our mayor and the city manager after his update.
Sure. Thanks. And good morning, everybody. And thanks. I'll just add a couple of things. The mayor gave you a real good rundown of what's coming to council. I'll echo if it was peaceful for a moment there in the summer. We're coming back fast. So a lot going on. Hopefully that comes through in that update, that we have an awful lot coming down the chute starting Monday night with the next meeting. The one thing I might add to that is a couple of updates on what's going on at the planning commission level. I think we often talk about what's coming to council, but I would just suggest to those of you who are interested in things happening out there, that's another place where you might want to be just every couple of weeks peeking at those agendas and seeing what's going on. Last month, the planning commission approved a conditional use permit, which is required for an alcohol use for what's called a bubble bar on North Street. You may have seen some chatter about that. We do have a pretty well-defined and complex ordinance that limits concentration of alcohol establishments in the downtown area. There's been some, I think, confusion on that. Understandably, it's a pretty complicated ordinance that was put in place a few years ago, and some questions about how alcohol-based businesses can be approved. Given that, for those who are interested in that, I'd really encourage you to carve out 10 minutes at some point, find that staff report, read it. It does a really good job. Or sit on the couch with popcorn and watch the video of that past meeting. But I know there's a lot of interest out there, and I know it can be hard to stay on top of that. So I would just recommend that people interested might have a look at that. Likewise, Planning Commission, I think on the 21st, later this month, is going to be holding a design review for the new proposed hotel project on North Street and Healdsburg Avenue. I know that also has lots of interest, and I know there's lots of questions about how that fits into ordinances that limit hospitality uses. So again, that information would be available. So as we see chatter out there, as people have an interest, for sure it's an opportunity to weigh in, but it's also an opportunity to just get a nice succinct, I think pretty good explanation of what's coming. In both of those cases, if there is an approval by the planning commission and there's not an appeal, that's the approval. Depending on what's needed, not every project finds its way to the city council. It could still be really important, but some things can be approved at staff level, some things can be approved at the planning commission level, some things go to the city council. It really just depends what it is and what level of approval they need. So just a friendly reminder to folks. I know this council's enough to keep us busy in terms of topics coming, but that's worth a look, and some pretty important things coming down the chute there too. So like the mayor, happy to help with questions, but just wanted to share that.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions for our city manager or for our mayor? And thank you also to Councilmember Evelyn Mitchell, who helped us set up the call with Leslie, as well as Councilmember Ron Edwards, who is online this morning, along with our board chair, Maggie Curry. Great. Well, that is it for this morning. I hope all of you will be joining us for our annual barbecue on August 16th at Rodney Strong. We are at about 300 people already, so it should be a really fun event. It is a luau theme, so I hope you wear your Hawaiian shirts. Flip-flops are welcome. It's also our annual business award, so we're really excited to have gotten a lot of traction for this. We had over 100 nominations, and then from there, the ballot went out and closed on the 31st, and we had over 3,000 votes in there. So congratulations to all those who are nominated, and we'll be announcing all of the winners at the barbecue, and hope to see you there. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jess.